Hello, hello. I have missed you all so very much. Today we will be discussing tragic love stories, being trapped within expectations, and unrealistic expectations for how to get a happy ending. I will be using MXTX and her works as an example since they often appear in her works. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, well, welcome to the video. I'm going to explain literally all of it. So, let's actually talk about the first point in this video. Right? The tragic love stories and how they relate to storytelling. The Scum Villain's self-saving system is the first of the book series that MXTX ever wrote. And while it does have a happy ending, the girls are just there to be eye candy. Shen Yuan, the gayest man to ever gay, but never admits it, dies while he decided to read all 300 million words in 20 days. My man was putting away at least 15 million, easy, every single day. He had a chronic illness. Other than him not wanting to do anything, there is zero in-text confirmation of this. So, for the sake of this video, I will have to say that he doesn't, even though I'm firmly in the chronic illness camp for our fandom, right? Shen Yuan was just a trust fund baby. So he dies and wakes up as the villain of the story he just got done hate reading about. Classic isekai stuff. Has to try to figure out a way to avoid underline italicized being going, and all this could be avoided if he wasn't being forced to try a novel beyond a name drop or two, but is a love story and not like an episode of 2020. Because if you haven't read the book, there's a reason why he dies. He didn't just up and croak because he finally has a panic attack. Shen Qingqiu, not as many of these novels as ever. I don't understand the chi deviations, the cultivators. I understand none of it, like, on an intrinsic level. I can explain it to you, but if you were to ask me to deep dive into this, I couldn't. So, if this doesn't make sense to you, this is the only way I can explain it. Chi is basically energy, and it's directly affected by how you're feeling and whether or not you have good control over it. Cultivators, just people that know how to, like I said before, twice now. All because this evil sword that Bingha picked up when he got pushed into hell. This sword is literally a heart demon. Literally, he is...
You tricked me. Tricked you? No, I saved you.
The tragedy of this is that Bingha thinks that Shen Qingqiu hates him, or that he's done something wrong, that no matter how much Bingha loves him, Shen Qingqiu will never see him as anything more than a monster because he's half demon. Spoiler alert, even though you already know this, because I told you about it literally not that long ago, Shen Qingqiu fucking knows this already, and he's been in love with Luo Bingha since chapter 1, when he was still Shen Yuan in a different world. And it takes multiple books to come to this. Got put into, is also forced to live in this world and also be an active member of this bullshit, and the original author is a gay man who died and got put into his own novel as what is essentially cannon fodder. So why is it so hetero if a gay man wrote it? Well, because he had to write bad porn and cool action over the story he wanted to write because he had to pay the bills. The story that Shen Qingqiu saw the barest hints of and loved way back at the beginning, and all 300 million words of why he originally started reading it. The original story that was being written is what caught his attention. The bad porn and everything else he hated, but he wanted to see if maybe the story gets over this bad porn plot, and when it doesn't, he's upset. That's why he ends up writing that hate comment, and that's why he ends up dying in his first life. The tragic love story is about how the original novel was robbed of what it could have been, and it was denied. The tragic love story of how Shen Qingqiu loved Luo Bingha so much that he died for him. Twice. Granted, they get their happy ending, but they have to suffer for that ending, bro. So, I'll be honest, while I was reading the second book, I got to the part where Shen Qingqiu dies, and then it took me a stupid long time to keep reading, because I was having a whole meltdown, because, like, The story of Eurydice already messed me up as a kid. I did not need it in danmei form all over again. For the people who missed it or just, don't know about the myth or only know it vaguely by name, let me explain. Orpheus, who is the main love interest of Eurydice in this myth, fell in love with her, right? Eurydice, the main character of this. Because Eurydice was a woman of beauty and grace, and he married her, and they lived happily ever after for like a year and a half. I am being facetious, but it feels like that. And when they call this guy to bless their marriage, this motherfucker tells them, their perfection was not meant to last. First of all, dude, don't say that shit out loud. Second of all, fuck you. Eurydice dies, as you do in Greek myths, and he sets out on a quest to go find her and bring her back to the world of the living. Super Gucci, good plan. Time to walk your happy ass down to hell, as you do. He presents himself in front of the Greek god of the underworld, Hades, and his wife Persephone, who does not have time for your shit. So Orpheus does the only thing he's really good at down there, because he's not a fighter. He plays the lyre. He plays an instrument and sings a heartbreaking song that brings even the god of death to compassion. Now, this is an old Greek myth, so Hades tells him, you can take Eurydice back with you under one condition. She has to follow Orpheus all the way back up to the land of the living, and he is not allowed to look at her the entire time. She would have to follow behind him while walking out of the underworld caves, and he has to hope and pray that she loves him enough that she's going to be walking right behind him the entire time. Orpheus, this fucking fool, thinks it's a simple task for a patient man like himself. I'm gonna let you know right now, nobody is that patient, and this was a scam from the word go. But he says, alright, let's do it. That idiot. So Hades lets them go, back to the world of the living. First of all, you fool, there is no such thing as an easy task when it comes to the dead, or in Greek myths at all. There is no second of all. My whole thing was said in point 1. But he goes for quite a bit, right, walking, self-assured that Eurydice is behind him. And at one point he realizes he really can't hear her footsteps. And then he starts to doubt, and he starts to think, maybe Hades tricked him. What if Eurydice wasn't behind him? What if what was behind him was just a ghost? Not her ghost, just a random shade that was just following him back home. And it's only about 50, maybe 5 feet even from the exit. Orpheus buckles. He loses his faith that Eurydice loves him, and he turns back around, and she's trapped forever in the underworld. She doesn't ever get to go back. And he doesn't really take that well. I remember when I first read this story, I was rooting for the happy ending. I was expecting it. And then 12-year-old me had my little heart broken when he turned around. All that work, all the drama, all that love meant nothing because of one mistake. The reason why I bring this up is because Shang Qingqiu fucking died right in his lover's arms, and all I could think of was the myth of Eurydice. And what Shang Qingqiu did was not a mistake, but it broke my heart all over again when he died for someone he loved so much. Tragic love stories are the best and worst of the romance genre. They make you feel too much, dude. Oh, belittle. Most people shut down and resentment starts to build. Almost like the love you put into the world will come back. That's gonna get its own separate video outside of this. But moving on to being trapped within expectations just like Tai Lang Jun, it's time to talk about the Grand Master of Demonic Cultivation. Also MXTX. These titles, please, they are so long. Anyway, the general synopsis of this novel, as stated by Wikipedia, because I've tried several times to get into this very particular fandom and watch the shows. I tried to watch Untamed, and I can't get into it. Like, I tried, so we're gonna have to go by what Wikipedia and my friend told me, because straight Wikipedia and it connects to my script well, so thanks Wikipedia. The Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation is the story of the rise, death, and rebirth of Wei Wuxian, a man who made a name for himself as a cultivator with unconventional and forbidden methods to control the undead. Renowned as the founder of the demonic path, he is eventually killed during the attack by the Four Great Clans. 13 years later, his spirit is forcefully summoned during a self-sacrificial... Wow, let's try that again. Self-sacrificial. There we go. I'm sorry. It's hoping that with a new and perhaps unrecognizable face, he might be able to hide who he is from the people who probably are still alive and still know him. But then, those dead things. Not me. I grew up as a mortician's kid. I am the outlier in this chart. I cannot be counted. Unless you live in a world full of demons and monsters and the living dead, then it might be a little bit more reasonable to have necrophobia. Realistically, right? In a world where this can happen, being scared of somebody who can do it makes sense. So the power of raising the dead at his fingertips, it's well within reason to think that he should be the bad guy. Even though that's really not what happens. Hell, that is what happens in the story when they kill him the first time. He is told that he's the bad guy. He's not. When you watch this, like I said, I tried to watch it on and off so many times, I just can't get into the story. Shout out to Lara for fucking telling me shit. Jesus Christ. Dankeschön, Lara. He's not what the whole world says he is. When he doesn't really want to be the guy that raises dead people and is the bad guy. He just can. And when the whole world says, no, you have to be because of XYZ reasons that we know are bad, yeah, you tend to think that from popular media. You tend to think that if necrophobia is a very realistic fear in the world you grow up in. But for a guy who can raise the dead, and also can drink anybody underneath the table, and is goofy as shit, he doesn't meet the standard for being a bad guy, except for raising the dead. And it's often, even in our own Western media, raising dead makes you the bad guy. It often makes you the bad guy. But the story makes it a point, in fact it goes out of its way, to tell you that yes, this scary power is something that he has and that he has worked on for a long time, but he's not evil. The power can be, but he specifically isn't. He's just a goofy guy who marries the man who mourned him for 13 years. Like, I will admit, I know very little about this story because I have just not been able to get into it, right? Like I've said several times, I just can't get into it. I did a quick read-through of the first book, watched the free stuff on YouTube, read a bunch of fan fiction, went deep diving into a 4.5-hour conversation with Lara, my friend from Germany, and no, I couldn't get into it. I'm sorry, MXTX, I'm sure it's a beautiful story. I like the art. That's about as far as I can get. So I can admit right here and now that my reading of this might be 100% wrong, but from what I get, from what I've read and being trapped within expectations, this kind of fits, right? Because being trapped within expectations is terrible. And Wei Wuxian was doing his best. Not that he was doing his best to be the evil bad guy. He was just trying to do his best to be the best at what he could do. Give him a break. And now we get to talk about my favorite, my second favorite of MXTX's works. The Scum Villain is always first, but this is always my second favorite. Heaven Official's Blessing, and the unrealistic expectations for how to get a happy ending. So if you don't know about Heaven Official's Blessing, and you don't watch Kiktor or anything relevant like that, let me break it down for you. 800 years of pining. No, for real, the main love interest, Huachang, loves Jilian, the main protagonist, for 800 years and follows him from one life to the next. First, as a little boy that Jilian saves, then as a soldier who dies for him, and then as a very powerful ghost king who could just break into heaven itself, as you do. Because, why not? It's a gay love story. Huachang is so in love that he follows Jilian even when he's a little ghost fire and can't do anything to help him. This is what pushed him to become a ghost king, to become so powerful that he could protect the god he loves. A god, I might add, that was banished from heaven and then came back 3 different times. Like, dude, do you know how crazy powerful you must be to come back 3 separate times? Like, middle fingering all the bitches who doubted you 2 times in a row? Queen energy. We love it here, okay? He is, and, like, I'm being serious. Jillian is very powerful, and he's such a little shit, and I love him for it. Like, the books are hilarious if you read them. You should read them. Somebody on YouTube actually has this whole thing where they read the first book out loud to you so you can, like, get involved into it. It's fun. You should do it. But this whole series is how much these two keep trying to make each other happy, even if it means if they're unhappy in some way, shape, or form. The unrealistic expectation for how to get a happy ending is like the hill that Hua-Chung dies on several times because he wants to be everything for Jillian, even if he had to remake himself into something terrible to do it. The man challenged 33 gods to a duel, and he bet his life that he would beat him, and he did. But, like, bro, that could have perma-killed you if you had lost. And he didn't care, even a little bit. He looked at them, was like, fucking bet. Because he didn't really give a shit if he died. He wanted to make a point to these gods that had been cruel to Jillian in a different life. And if Jillian wasn't going to do anything about it, Hua-Chung was, because he wasn't going to let that slight stand. So Hua-Chung and his unrealistic expectations for how to get a happy ending are on full display in the story from the word go, because the love story is just so good. But Hua-Chung himself just loves Jillian so much that he's willing to die over and over and over and over and over again for the man who saved him as a child, for the man who wanted to save his kingdom more than anything else. Jillian, I want to point out, was 17 when he became a god. So even though he's 800 years old, homeboy looks like he's 17 forever. And he's lived a lot of lifetimes, like so many of them. 800 years worth of a life, and 1,000 mistakes between, like, every single moment. Because I want to impart unto you how crazy this story is. And Hua-Chung was looking for him. 800 years of pining, 800 years in a cave filled with thousands of statues of Jillian. 800 years. For people, that's a number and we don't quite understand. Empires rise and fall, and new empires take their place and are on the brink of collapse in 800 years. 800 years of unrealistic expectations for how to get a happy ending, because he thought, well, if he suffered enough and I work hard enough and just give enough, I'd be worthy enough for my god to love me. My guy, love isn't about worth. Love just is, and Hua-Chung proves that he was always enough for Jillian. Hua-Chung's unrealistic expectations for how to get a happy ending also apply to Jillian. Not as bad as Hua-Chung is, but awful fucking close. Both of these little fools are trying so hard to be worthy of love, and like, babes, please. Your unhappy moments to help shape your ideals is like a thing, but you do not need to be unhappy forever to get a happy ending. In short, this is how I feel about all of these fandoms and how I personally view them. Is there anything else? No, that's about it. Okay, bye.